I made it just in time for my son and daughter-in-law's 10th wedding anniversary party. But by the time I walked into the restaurant, dinner was already over. 14 empty plates littered the table, and my daughter-in-law just smirked, slid a bill for $2,200 across the table, and said, "You handle this, you're the family ATM anyway." I didn't argue. I just tore the bill to pieces, turned around, and walked out. And that very night, I started cutting off everything they had taken for granted for far too long. The heavy oak door of the Black Angus clicked shut behind me. The dining room smelled of seared steak and rich Cabernet. I glanced down at my watch, 6:30 p.m. sharp. I was right on time for the dinner celebrating my son Logan's 10th anniversary with his wife Chloe. But as I reached the long table, tucked away in the back booth, I froze. 14 empty plates sat on the white tablecloth, littered with crumbs and the remnants of an opulent feast. Wine glasses with a few leftover drops caught the warm glow of the chandeliers. The party was clearly over. Chloe, wearing a flashy, deep red silk blouse, noticed me first. Instead of a warm welcome, she gave me a dismissive wave, like I was some annoying acquaintance she'd bumped into. "Oh, Evelyn, you actually made it," she called out across the table. The low murmur of chatter among the relatives died down instantly. An uncomfortable silence filled the space. I stood at the head of the table, clutching my purse tightly. "I thought we were meeting at 6:30, I said, calmly, my eyes scanning the stuffed, complacent faces of the guests. My son Logan avoided eye contact entirely suddenly, very focused on dabbing his mouth with a cloth napkin. "We moved it up to 5, he mumbled, refusing to look up. "Didn't Chloe tell you?" Chloe just gave an indifferent shrug. The expensive new gold bracelet Logan had presumably given her earlier flashed on her wrist. "I'm pretty sure I mentioned it might change," she said in a honeyed tone. "Besides, that we figured you'd be too busy anyway." The words stung, but I didn't let it show. I had double-checked the time twice that day, once via text in the morning and once over the phone when Chloe called at noon. Chloe reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She slid it toward me like a peace offering. It was the total bill for the night. $2,243.50. "We figured you'd pick up the tab tonight," Chloe said with a broad smile. "Since you missed the actual dinner, it only seems fair. After all, you're our cash cow." Chloe's sister Rachel let out a quiet giggle. I looked Chloe dead in the eye, tore the bill into tiny confetti-sized pieces without saying a word, and let them drop right onto the table. I turned around and walked out of the restaurant without looking back. But that was just the beginning. When I got home, I locked the front door of my first-floor apartment. The duplex belonged to me. Logan and Chloe lived in the entire upper unit completely rent-free. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from a simmering, deep-seated rage. I kicked off my shoes and went straight to my small home office. The image of those 14 expectant faces at the restaurant table was burned into my mind. They hadn't missed my company. They were just waiting for my wallet. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a thick gray binder labeled Family Support. As a retired bank manager, I had meticulously documented every single financial transaction over the years. I spread the bank statements from the past 3 years across the desk, yellow highlighter marking page after page. Here was an interest-free loan for Chloe's new car. There was the entire utility bill for the whole house, which I had quietly absorbed. I grabbed a notepad and started tallying up the numbers. The further my pen slid down the page, the tighter my stomach knotted. When I saw the final sum, I dropped the pen in sheer disbelief. $58,412.30. I had spent nearly $60,000 on my son and his wife in just 3 years. I thought I was helping them build a life. In reality, I was just subsidizing their luxury. Right then, my phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Chloe. "You embarrassed us tonight. Let us know when you're ready to apologize." I felt a profound coldness wash over me. The emotional guilt tripping had lost its power. I logged into my online banking. My first move was simple, but devastating. I canceled the recurring transfer to the joint household account I had been funding every single month. Next, I pulled up my credit card portal. Chloe had an authorized user card for emergencies. With a few clicks, I deactivated it permanently. Finally, I blocked Logan's number, then Chloe's, and then every relative who had been sitting at that table. The house fell completely silent, but the real storm had yet to hit. For the next 2 weeks, my home was a fortress of peace. I went about my usual routine, tending to the garden and reading. But just because my phone wasn't ringing didn't mean things weren't happening behind the scenes. On the 3rd day after the restaurant incident, an old acquaintance, Martha, stopped by my garden fence. We hadn't spoken in years, but she was looking at me with a strange, pitying expression. "Evelyn, are you doing okay?" she asked softly. "Chloe mentioned at the grocery store that you're going through a really rough patch." "Nervous exhaustion," she said. I gripped my head shears firmly and met her gaze with absolute calm. "I'm doing wonderful, Martha. Thank you for asking," I replied, my voice completely steady. Martha looked taken aback by my composure. "Oh, well, Chloe said you had a total emotional breakdown at the restaurant and desperately needed professional help." I offered a faint smile, politely said goodbye, and walked back inside. The neighborhood rumor mill was in overdrive. Chloe was trying to paint me as mentally unstable just to justify their entitlement. Later that afternoon, I heard heavy footsteps in the shared foyer. Logan and Chloe's apartment door was directly above mine. A moment later, there was a knock at my door. I peeked through the peephole and saw Chloe's mother, Brenda, standing outside. She was holding a box of chocolates and wearing a strained, fake smile. I didn't open the door. I just stood there perfectly still until she finally gave up and walked away. I was done entertaining their games. Instead, I sat down at my computer and built a comprehensive spreadsheet. Every single expense I had covered for the upstairs apartment over the last few years was meticulously itemized. Roof repairs, the new HVAC system, landscaping. All things that increased the property value, but that they benefited from entirely rent-free. I printed out the ledger and slipped it into a folder. It was my insurance policy. Suddenly, a familiar sound at the front door caught my attention. It was almost 8 in the evening when I heard a key turn in the main deadbolt of the shared foyer. It was Logan. But he didn't head upstairs to his place. He stopped in front of my apartment door and rattled the doorknob. It was locked. That was a first for him. My door had always been wide open. He had never learned to respect my privacy because I had never forced him to. He knocked loudly against the wood. "Mom, open up. We need to talk. This whole stunt with the bank accounts and the credit card is ridiculous. Chloe couldn't even put down the deposit for our new couch today." He yelled through the door, his voice strained and frantic. I walked up to the door, but didn't open it. I spoke directly through the wood. "Logan, I've said all I have to say. My financial support is officially over. You are both adults, and you make your own money. But you can't just cut us off like this," he shouted angrily. "We counted on your share for the bills. Chloe already budgeted everything out." Right then, I heard Chloe's heels clicking down the stairs. She practically flew down the steps, her voice screeching with anger. "Let me handle This Logan, she snapped. She slammed her palm against my door. Evelyn, who do you think you are, blocking our numbers and freezing the cards? We live here together. We're family. I took a deep breath and kept my composure. My voice was quiet, but firm enough to cut right through the door. Chloe, this house is in my name. You live upstairs rent-free. If you can't afford the utilities you need to find a smaller apartment, I am no longer funding your lifestyle. Now please, get out of my hallway. A sharp silence followed. I could hear Chloe gasping for air. You are going to regret this, Evelyn, she hissed. We'll see who holds all the cards. Her footsteps stomped back up the stairs. The next morning, a call from the bank changed everything. The following Tuesday, I was sitting down for breakfast when my landline rang. Since I had blocked my family's cell phones, this was an outside line. I picked it up. Good morning, Ms. Beckett. This is Sarah Jenkins from Chase Bank Account Management. The woman's voice was polite, but strictly professional. My internal alarm system went off instantly. Good morning, Ms. Jenkins. What can I do for you? I asked, calmly. I'm calling regarding a power of attorney and account authorization form submitted for your primary checking and savings accounts. The representative explained. We received a signed document yesterday at our local branch. It bears your name and signature granting full account access to your son, Logan Beckett. Since the signature deviates slightly from the reference card we have on file, we wanted to do a quick verbal verification. A cold shiver ran down my spine, followed instantly by a wave of absolute clarity. Ms. Jenkins, I did not submit that form, and I have not authorized anyone to access my accounts. I said, my voice so sharp it made the line go dead silent for a second. The document is a forgery. I hereby revoke any alleged authorization and request an immediate security lock on my accounts. No one but me is to have access to those funds. Ms. Jenkins switched into immediate professional mode. Understood, Ms. Beckett. I will flag the paperwork and freeze any pending authorization immediately. Please preserve the original document, I added. I will be at the branch tomorrow morning in person. After hanging up, I stared at the phone. They had actually tried to take over my life savings. Logan and Chloe had crossed the line from family entitlement to criminal desperation. They were panicking because the well had run dry. Logan had forged my signature, the boy I raised. It hurt, but the pain instantly hardened into an impenetrable wall. I packed up my documents. When I went to leave that afternoon, Logan cornered me in the foyer. Thank you for watching Quiet Revenge. Some AI tools may assist parts of our process, but every story is personally selected, reviewed, edited, and carefully produced by our team. If you'd like to help us continue creating meaningful stories, you can support us with the cost of a small cup of coffee. Patreon, https://www.patreon.com/Quiet Revenge Family Co-Fi. https://co-fi.com/The Story Family. PayPal, https://www.paypal.com/PayPal.me/Kan We truly appreciate your kindness and support. My trip to the bank had been seamless. Ms. Jenkins showed me the document. It was a clumsy attempt at copying my signature unmistakably written in Logan's handwriting. I signed an official affidavit stating the document was fraudulent, but I intentionally chose not to press charges, not out of pity, but because I intended to handle this internally on my own terms. My account was now protected by a PIN known only to me. When I got back to the duplex around noon, Logan was standing in the shared hallway, holding a stack of mail, looking exhausted. When he saw me, he stepped forward. "Mom, we need to talk. The bank called me. Why did you block the authorization? We desperately need that money for car repairs. You have plenty sitting in savings." He cried out, completely oblivious to the gravity of what he'd done. Right then, the upstairs door clicked open and Chloe peered over the banister. "What's going on down there?" she called out shrilly. I looked up at her, then back to Logan. "Your little fraud attempt at the bank failed. As of right now, there are new rules in this house." I pulled a formal letter from my bag and handed it to Logan. He took it, his hands trembling. "That is the official breakdown of the property expenses for this year. Since you occupy the entire upper floor, you will be responsible for 60% of all utilities and maintenance starting next month. The payment must be deposited into my new account by the 1st of the month," I continued. "If it isn't, I will issue a formal eviction notice, cite owner occupancy intent, and put this house on the market." Chloe came tearing down the stairs. "You can't do that! Logan is your son!" she screamed. I looked at her coldly. "The deed is in my name. Either pay your share or pack your things. You have 4 weeks. I turned, unlocked my door, and stepped inside. That evening, there was another knock, but this one was insatiably soft. The next 3 weeks were defined by an icy silence. Logan and Chloe practically tiptoed past my door. However, I noticed their lifestyle changed dramatically overnight. Chloe's expensive SUV sat untouched in the driveway for days. Instead, Logan started taking the commuter bus to work early in the morning. Their sudden lack of funds was now on full display for the whole town to see. One afternoon, there was a gentle knock on my kitchen window facing the backyard. It was Logan. He was alone. I opened the back door and let him in. He sat down at the kitchen table where he had done his homework so many times as a child. "We don't have any money, Mom," he said, staring intently at his hands. "Chloe has been living way beyond our means for years. She opened lines of credit in my name without me knowing. When you cut off the accounts, the whole house of cards collapsed. The couch, the vacations, everything was financed on credit, and she just assumed you would eventually clear the debt." "Why did you forge my signature, Logan?" I asked, my voice leaving absolutely no room for excuses. He swallowed hard. "Chloe put immense pressure on me. She told me if I didn't get the money, she was taking the kids and leaving. I didn't know what else to do." I felt a brief twinge of maternal heartache, but I suppressed it immediately. "You are a grown man, Logan. You tried to steal from me. I am still going to clear out the upstairs apartment." He looked up terrified. "Why, I'm telling you we'll pay now, but my mind was made up. As long as you live here rent-free, you will never learn to stand on your own 2 feet. Furthermore, I need my peace. I am going to rent the upper unit to a quiet tenant. You two need to find your own place. You have 3 months. Logan lowered his head. He finally realized that the old version of me was gone. He stood up and left without another word. The great packing phase began. The following 2 months were a whirlwind of transition. Upstairs, the sounds of packing tape tearing and heavy boxes dragging echoed through the ceiling. Chloe didn't look at me once when we crossed paths in the yard. She was cold as ice, but her power over this family was broken. Logan kept his word. The first utility payment hit my new account right on the 1st of the month. He was working hard, and it showed. In the meantime, I listed the upstairs apartment for rent. Since the house was located in a desirable neighborhood, the applications flooded in. I screened them carefully and chose Clara, a retired school teacher who valued quiet just as much as I did. She signed a lease starting the first of the following month. The financial and emotional future of the house was secure. Everything was going according to plan. On the day Logan and Chloe moved out, a U-Haul truck backed into the driveway. Chloe's family arrived to help. Her sister Rachel and her mother Brenda threw venomous glares my way while I sat on the porch. I ignored them entirely. Logan carried the heavy furniture down the stairs by himself. He looked exhausted but determined. Chloe mostly stood around barking orders at the helpers. By late afternoon, the truck was fully loaded. Logan came down into my hallway one last time to hand over the keys. He placed the key ring on the small foyer table. "Here they are, Mom," he said quietly. "The place is clean. We found a small 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of town." I picked up the keys. "Thank you, Logan," I said. "I truly hope you use this as a chance for a fresh start." He gave a silent nod, walked to his truck, and drove away. I walked up the stairs into the empty rooms. It was completely peaceful. A new chapter had begun. 6 months flew by after Logan and Chloe moved out. Clara had settled into the upstairs apartment and proved to be the absolute perfect neighbor. Sometimes we would share a cup of coffee on the back patio and chat. Her rent was always on time, and my savings account had bounced back beautifully. The money I used to blindly throw at my daughter-in-law's whims stayed right where it belonged in my own bank account. My life was quieter now, but infinitely richer. I finally booked the trip to the Oregon coast that I had put off for so many years. I was leaving for 2 weeks next month. When I looked at my phone these days, I didn't feel a pit of anxiety. I kept most of the extended family blocked. The truth was, I simply didn't miss them. Anyone who viewed me solely as a source of cash had no place in my life. Logan called me every now and then from a new number. Our conversations were brief but respectful. He eventually told me that he and Chloe had separated. Their marriage hadn't survived the sudden lack of funds and the loss of their subsidized lifestyle. As soon as the money stopped flowing, Chloe's affection evaporated. I felt for him, but I knew this was the only way my son would ever truly grow up. One Saturday, I was out in the garden, pruning the roses. The sun was warm on my face, and I felt completely light. My neighbor and dear friend Julian walked over carrying a box of pastries. We sat on the porch and took in the quiet afternoon. "You look great, Evelyn," he said with a smile. "Way more relaxed than this time last year." I took a sip of my tea. "I got my life back, Julian." It wasn't until I drew a hard line in the sand that I could finally breathe again. The day of my trip to the coast finally arrived. My suitcase was packed in the hall, and Julian had offered to drive me to the train station. Before he arrived, I did one final walkthrough of the house to check all the windows. Clara had promised to collect my mail while I was away. Just as I went to lock the front door, my phone rang. It was Logan. I picked it up. "Hey, Mom, just wanted to call and wish you a safe trip," he said, his voice sounding significantly more grounded and mature than it used to. "Thank you, Logan. I appreciate that," I replied, genuinely pleased. "By the way, I officially paid off the remainder of what I owed you for the utilities this month. The transfer should be in your account." I smiled softly. "Yes, I saw it go through. I'm proud of you for taking accountability, Logan." He had learned his lesson. "It was necessary, Mom. I get why you had to do what you did now. We took advantage of you. I'm sorry." It was the first time he had spoken the plain truth without making excuses. It wasn't a total reconciliation, but it was a solid foundation for a new relationship built on mutual respect. We'll catch up when I get back, Logan, I said gently. Take care of yourself. I hung up the phone. Julian honked his horn from the driveway. I grabbed my suitcase, locked up the apartment, and stepped out into the crisp morning air. I got into his car, and we pulled away. Looking out the window, I watched my house grow smaller in the distance. It was no longer a place of exploitation. It was my home, safe, secure, and protected by the boundaries I had finally found the courage to set. I closed my eyes as the journey began, looking forward to the sound of the ocean. I had finally found my peace, and this time, I wasn't going to sacrifice it for anyone. Thank you for watching Quiet Revenge. Some AI tools may assist parts of our process, but every story is personally selected, reviewed, edited, and carefully produced by our team. If you'd like to help us continue creating meaningful stories, you can support us with the cost of a small cup of coffee. Patreon, https://www.patreon.com/Quiet Revenge Family, co-fi, https://co-fi.com/The Story Family, PayPal, https://www.paypal.com/PayPal me/Kanhuangmin. We truly appreciate your kindness and support.